How's it going, everybody? So I wanted to talk a little bit about uh, the types of people who get legal jobs typically, and how that also can have some relationships to other types of jobs that are being gotten by people generally. Generally, the economics of employment as it stands today. And this kind of comes off a little bit from a user whose questions I was responding to. This person is called Misanthrope8165. They claim to come from the T14 school. They said their first year they just finished up an internship, and they were trying to emphasize how if you go to a T14 school or something of that nature, maybe UT, Vandy, um, that's like a different world. Like if you get to there, then you're like going to be successful. And I think a misconception that people have when they're running these things is that they forget that it's not just the money, it's the lifestyle. The lifestyle that is of having a quality of life, the effects of your work environment on you, the stress, uh, the types of issues you deal with, and those things have to be taken into account. People are just not taking into account those things, and many people who go into law later on have regrets about it. There's significant rates of depression, alcoholism, higher divorce rates, because the people who are involved with law tend to be dealing with a lot of really stupid stuff. Minutia over terrible laws, minutia over bickering people, minutia over divorces, over, arguments, really. I mean, and some people thrive off this, and that's great. And I'm the type of person who thrives off of arguments too. But there comes a point, especially in the emotional realm, and I felt this too, especially when I did public defense work, is like it just gets really sucky after a while. You sit there and you're like, I feel like I'm the end of this terrible chain of events, and you can't even do anything. Yeah, I can help my client, but that didn't fix the broken home they came from. That didn't fix the underlying aspect, and it can be really depressing. And people don't really think about that aspect. They don't think about the material they're working with. And it's like, great, you could be making tons of money, but if you're working 6 minutes to a billable hour and you're working 70 to 100 hours a week, and all those issues you're dealing with are just with the most, silliest of bickering arguments, and you're like, man, there's just a better way to do this. And of course, there is with everything in government, but you just start to get really frustrated. And a lot of people just turn to drinking, and they get really depressed because it's frustrating to deal with these stupid things day in, day out with no end in sight, no resolution in sight. That isn't to say that there aren't people who can't do good work or can't function very well in that kind of environment. But when you look at the whole of people who are applying to law school, people who are just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and make money and be successful and everything's going to be great and gravy, it's just not the same. And that goes even for those, T14 grads. I mean, great, okay, you get into a top 14 school and maybe you start to enjoy it and things like that. But maybe when they get out, even though they have that financial aspect, maybe they get that 160,000 job right out from Big Law. What's the lifestyle? What's how are you living? What's your quality of life? Now, granted, I mean, again, if you were like, I'm okay with that, that's what I like to do, doing this day in, day out makes me happy, good for you. But I'm not dealing with those specific small group of people. There are plenty of people who law school is a great fit. But most people who are considering law school on the onset are, in a sense, like me. They didn't know what was going in. And even with some research that I had done, going into it, you'll find that learning about it only comes really through kind of either practicing or getting that internship and shadowing experience, really delving in. And a lot of people don't do that part. They don't do that. I worked in a legal environment for several years. I, did a lot of shadowing and or internships and things like that. A lot of people just go in thinking this is my way out. This is my way to status, or this is my way to happiness and money. And because of that, that's how come I make or have made a generality about most people should not consider law school JDs a big scarlet letter, because once you get that, getting out can be very hard, because people are like, oh, you're overqualified, or maybe if you're trying to get a law job to survive, oh, you're underqualified if you didn't have that prior experience, or maybe you're trying to switch careers, oh, well, what, did you fail at being a lawyer and now you want to be here, or oh, you're trying to get in so you can sue me? I mean, there's so many things that go on, and it's a tough fit to move out of there. And there are there are careers and options and stuff like that where people to move out of, but it's hard. It's not that simple. It's not like, oh, you got a JD, man, you must be smart and a great critical thinker. You're just the kind of person that we want here. It doesn't happen quite that often. These days, people want certifications and degrees in the related field, and they want you to have, like, for your entry-level job to have 5 years of experience. And that's just a generality for anybody these days. It's kind of crazy. But there's just tons of red tape and stupidity because there is a surplus of workers and the demand is low because of the regulatory environment. And bringing this back a little bit to my original statement about how are people getting jobs and these people who are moving out, who are the people that are being successful? Look at the patterns, and I saw a lot of this when I was in school and also when I was working at different legal environments. But these people who are successful, you're going to find these common traits, right? Family was involved with law, right? You had your family out. They gave you the experience. They gave you the into the firm. You have a spouse who also is a joint uh, income producer. Maybe not a spouse. Maybe it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, long time, whatever, fiance, whatever. You have another person where you can sit there and you can dick around for 6 months to 2 years because, okay, well, I have somebody else making money, so I got a place to stay and sleep or eat or whatever, and I'm good, right? If you're not that, you're like, man, my family doesn't have money, and I don't have a significant other or spouse that could help me float until I find a job. Well, then you're kind of in a tough spot. I mean, when I was working, doing the public defense work, I think most people in the office that I saw that were there, they had a significant other that was a professional who was making buku money. Like one was a big corporate lawyer, and the other one was I think some sort of uh, physician, or maybe as a physician or physical therapist, something in the medical field where they're making six figures, they're in great shape. And this is just it. These people who are like doing the law school thing or who are making it okay, they have that support system there. And a lot of people who are going into law and thinking, oh, this is my way out, if you don't have that support system, it's really hard. You can really fall flat in your face. And that's why I say really important to consider the opportunities that you have for scholarships, for getting a full ride or near full ride, because when you go out, well, at least then you don't have that debt on your back. If you get float through and maybe you have to get some menial job in order to survive, then that at least does not face you down. Now, of course, federal repayment programs, if you're on that kind of thing, there's income-based repayment, there's other types of ways that you could push it off. But it's still a serious issue, and it also still is a serious issue for your working environment. Your physical health, your psychology, how much you have to work or not work, or where your moving opportunities are. And this whole law is the way out to riches, like the movies kind of thing. It's just not what it used to be. And yeah, of course, there's still gonna be people like, yeah, I went to C14 school, and guess what? Now I'm at American Law Top 100 for something like that. Okay, great, that's great. Is that the majority of people who applied to law school? Certainly not by the majority who apply. Is that the majority of the opportunities that are being offered to students as a whole when they graduate? No. Well, okay, great. There are that selection of schools, and some people want to be like, oh, if you don't go to our T14, you're gonna, be useless or whatever. It's like, it's bullcrap, dude. Like, if you go to a law school and generally you're even in like the top 100, maybe even 150, guess what? There's lawyers all over who are employed in that, and some of the best trial attorneys are people that didn't go to the top law schools. It's just what it is. Sorry, the reality is there's 50 states, and there's lawyers for different states, and not all of them have those top-ranked law schools. So there's lawyers for everything, okay? So going to a top-ranked law school does not guarantee your success, nor does it act as a barrier to making those multi-million-dollar settlements. It's really about your work ethic and the type of work you do, and sometimes, your business ethics. I mean, really, it's about how you present yourself in business. A lot of people who are those top-end law students don't have the business side. They're just minutia workers. They're really good at pubbling through small details that really, if you read it, you'd be like, wow, whoever wrote this to begin with is stupid, but you have to deal with it. Politicians. But guess what? That doesn't give you the business skills in the sense to grow a firm or do something with your legal knowledge, how to apply it. So, in some, still taking into consideration all the factors of the economy, which, in case you haven't been watching, the economy is just switching players. There are certain rich people who are formerly rich people who are becoming poor. There are certain poor people becoming rich. That's because federal regulatory environment is changing the hands of the money. When money changes hands because you have things like the Obamacare Act and other types of regulations, well, guess what? Then the accountants and the attorneys start to get a little surge of money because all the other businesses have to do compliance or anti-money laundering laws. Gosh. All those words, AML compliance, right? More of that regulation, more attorneys needed, more people in compliance. Guess what? It's just shifting money that way. Those are now the people buying the houses, and now the money's coming out of other people's hands. The people who are, under the age of 30 are seeing they're seeing employment still, but guess what? They're all people who are working at the minimum wage jobs. Their average income is under 25K. So there's a big farce going on. The wealth gap is growing, and no, it's not because of white dudes with big bags of money, although yes, you could blame them for the lobbying aspect, but it's because of the generality of the corporate government partnership, which creates an environment where people cannot develop their own business. They cannot set out their own new ventures because the cost of compliance and meeting, what is legally required is too high. The cost of getting experience is too high because the minimum wage gap keeps pushing people from being able to find opportunities. So it's a big storm that's coming, and right now some people are like, oh yeah, there's a little bit of surge in consumer confidence. No, sorry, guess what? It's just money changing hands, new people with new money to spend from people who used to have it. It's just being pushed around. So it's a big pot that's being stirred, and there's plenty more bubbles to burst. Student loan bubbles, certainly one of them among others. But keep in mind that anybody who's thinking about law school, look at the finances, look at the psychology, look at the working environment, look at what you'd like to do. I mean, again, most people go into law school saying, I'm going to do this. They go to law school, and they're like, oh, wait, never mind, I want to do this. And by the time they graduate, it's like, oh, I can only find a job in this. By the time you graduate, it might be something totally different than what you had in mind. But keep in mind what your support system is at the end of the day. Like, that's really the big deal. If you're going to navigate this, this is a long journey. It's 3 years. You have the bar. You have, waiting for the clearance for the bar and the time that you need to fund yourself in between, graduation then. Are you ready to support yourself and be able to financially cover yourself during that period? Are you ready to financially cover yourself to do all those interviews, keeping up with the Joneses, to have that nice, great suit that looks good, and send out all those cover letters and do the things that you want to look to make yourself look professional if you're trying to go for the higher paying job? Do you have that in place? If you don't, you're in trouble. And that's why there's this, big skew that the law and the legal profession really does favor those families who already came from money. The upper middle class, if your family was making national average maybe 70, 80K plus a year after taxes, then okay, yeah, great, you're good. You can come back home to mom and dad and live there for, 6 to 9 months, a year, if need be, to find a job. But if you're like, man, I'm transitioning from my current career field and I have nobody and crap, I just graduated and I still can't find a job because I wasn't top 5%. Are you planning for that? Are you thinking about those things? So that's a bigger point of what I want to say, and I hope that encourages you to do the research, shadow, intern, volunteer, figure it out before making that commitment, because that's a big commitment. That's a house of a commitment for some people. All right, take care, everyone. I'll talk to you.